comment on the community abuse video suggested that I actually go back and look into all of the tanks that got changed. While a lot of the tanks that got changes were very irrelevant to how good the tank is, there were quite a few tanks that had their stock grinds improved by quite a bit, according to this person. So I was like, sure. Obviously many CCs talked about this when it was first released, but aside from watching Dez skim patch notes for an hour, or Quickie Baby at all, sure, I'll take a stab at it. So I'm gonna go through, cut out the fluff, and let's see what they did, if anything. I've split this into 6 categories. Those categories being ruined, number padding / irrelevant, stock grinds, alright, noteworthy, and reborn. Most of the categories are fairly self-explanatory, but I will elaborate a little bit. Stock grind is essentially the tank plays almost exactly the same when fully upgraded, but getting to that point has been made incredibly less of a pain. Like, the TNH 105 and the 5100 both are still absolutely terrible tanks, but at the very least, their stock grinds aren't even worse than that now, or at least not really. Then there's the category that's just called alright, because that's a common reaction I had while looking through the entire list. The changes aren't really noteworthy, but they also aren't entirely worthless to the point of being classed as generic filler or, you know, actually noteworthy. The rest of the categories should be fairly self-explanatory though. So, out of 370-ish tanks, how many of them were just a bunch of nothing? Well, to my count, 175. This is obviously very open to differing opinions, but if a tank had a noteworthy problem and that problem persists, it's probably in this category. Stuff like the AMX-50B getting 100 more engine power, which doesn't actually matter that much because the tank still doesn't reach its top speed with its current ground resistances. Sure, the power to rate ratio is better, but that's not really something that needed to be changed at all because it was already decent. There's also a lot of changes in this update that feel like they were just done just for the sake of doing something. Like the EBR-90, which gets a whopping 50 more hit points and more expensive AP shells for some reason. The Ag Tiger lost 100 hit points. The Grill 15 turns 4 degrees faster per second. And basically every single artillery piece in the game didn't actually get anything. A lot of the tanks are in here just because they buffed the stock suspension to perform the same as the top suspension, which, when you think about it, isn't even going to be noticed at all. If they count it in the update, I'm going to count it as a stat pad. I'm not going to list all 175 tanks in the number padding category because I don't want you to be here for an hour as I list off hundreds of names of tanks that didn't even get any noteworthy changes anyways. I will, however, point out the worst offenders because some of these are absolutely hilarious. These are tanks that got buffed for literally no other reason than to just go, haha, number go up. The ones I'm going to show aren't even a matter of opinion. Like, look at some of these. 14 TP. 2 degrees more traverse speed. Kolahausenka, 10 more engine power. M18 Hellcat, 10 more hit points. Su-76M, 5 hit points. I think you get the gist of what this category has in it. To my count, 175 times. That puts the amount of empty space in these balance changes to about 45 to 47%. Why the percentages aren't exact is because it's inconsistent with how many tanks actually got changed in this, set of changes. They originally didn't list tanks like the Stinger and the KV-2R due to, in their words, not wanting to change rewards or premium tanks, which they then immediately went and changed those tanks right after they said that, so that's just wargaming. The number of tanks listed is 372, but there's multiple duplicate tanks, some of which are listed, some of which aren't, and they buffed more duplicate tanks after the patch, so I have no idea what the exact number of changed tanks is. And there's more on the way soon-ish. For tanks that had their stock grinds improved, it was a whopping 12%, or 44 tanks out of 370-ish. Keep in mind, these are essentially only buffs to the tank's stock grind. The tanks in this category play exactly the same as they did before, but the grind it takes to get to that point was made notably better. Another thing of note is that a lot of the tanks in this category are still awful to play, and only aren't in the number padding category because of these stock changes that make it less annoying to get to that point that isn't really worth getting to anyways a lot of the time. Since there are only 44 tanks in this category, I will list these because a fair number of these tanks were a true pain to grind out. I'm not going to get into specifics with how each of them got changed, but I will go through and just tell you how this happened. So, we got VK4502B, the E50, the Standard B, the Pergetto 66, the Type 61, the Type 68, the CS59, the Cent 71, the T95, the ST1, the T10, the TNH 105, the AMX 5100, the AMX 65T, the Panther 2, the UDES 03, Penarvin, UDES 14.5, AT15, Pershing, WZ131, BZ58, T34 100, that's the Czech one, the AMX M445, the EBR Hotchkiss, the Tiger 1, the Panther, normal one, the Tiger P, the Leo, the Swedish one, the Black Prince, the Comet, the Setter, the T71 CMCD, the KV3, the P43 Biz, that is the Tier 6, the STRV 74, the Churchill 7, the T3485, the non-premium, the Chinook, the Churchill 1, the M10 Wolverine, the B1, the Panzer 3J, and the Lago. And yes, I did include some Tier 4s in this. The tanks in this list really didn't get buffed up to a point that makes them better on the back end, but at least getting to that point is now much easier and less painful than it was before this. However, that's the only reason they're in this category. Then we have the alright category, full of stuff like the E75, where the stock grind was made exceedingly better, and the fully upgraded tank was made worse for no reason. It's just, alright? Like, the Centurion 1 got a ton of changes, and yet it still sucks. There's 74 tanks in this category, which I will be listing across the left side of the screen. Excluding armor changes that aren't listed in the patch notes, most of these tanks play almost exactly the same, with just enough changes about them to give the reaction of, alright. Like, not bad, but not really noteworthy. Just, alright. That's really all there is to say about these. Next is the very small category of tanks that have been completely ruined by these changes, and not in a way that's deserved like the Cheeto SP with the previous set of changes. I mean tanks that were enjoyable before this update, and now they won't be. Starting with the MT25, where the stock gun on the tank got removed just because it was the stock gun. Never mind the fact that it was the best gun on the tank with the best DPM, the best reload, the best accuracy stats, and a pretty unique gun in terms of how tier 6 lights go. Stock gun. And since it's a stock gun, it got bounced. The Cavalier is a fairly bad medium tank. It's basically a fat Cromwell with one of the lowest Mark of Excellence requirements in the game, and that's probably for a reason. A tank that is thoroughly uninteresting to play in pretty much every single way, except for one little thing. A 3.7-inch howitzer with one of the slowest shells in the game, allowing for some of the most hilarious gameplay you'll ever see. Which is why Wargaming removed the gun from the tank. The literal only interesting thing about this tank was taken away. Well done, gents. Now you have to use the Valiant's gun.
Ew! Dude! What the
Boogie lost its cheap, optional, best gun, which was the 100mm derp gun. And by cheap, I mean to unlock. It was, decently expensive to run, but it was a cheap gun to unlock. So, and you didn't even have to. You could just go to the next tank if you wanted to anyway. So now there's no reason to play that thing either. The ARL-44 and V39 both lost the pay-to-win 105mm gun. The AMX M445 kept the gun and had it reworked to balance it out, but both the ARLs lost it. This means both of these tanks are just now directly worse for no reason due to less damage output, and even though they have more pen, the accuracy on both of these guns is not great, albeit, better for the ARL V39, but I expect that. It's a tank destroyer. You had two perfectly fine tanks here, both kind of unique, and neither one of them are worth playing anymore once you're done grinding them. So pretty much the whole Japanese super heavy tank line has been revived in a decently incredible fashion, to the point where the Type 5 is probably going to get nerfed in like 2 patches, because it's that ridiculous now. The Tier 10 is broken OP. The Tier 9 is still really good. The Oho went from one of the worst tanks at Tier 8 to very competitive, and it was actually a hard carry tank in Last Stand.
Oh, no!
Even the Oni gets, 370 alpha now, which is quite a bit considering 122s do 390, and they give up a lot for that 390. It's a very real threat to tanks at the same tier. So, what did the OI get then? The OI got brutally murdered in a back alley and got stuffed in a trash can where it bled out. That's what the OI got. They nerfed anything and everything that could have been seen as a reason to play this tank, and then some. There was a reason you'd play this thing over the KV2, because it was better in Tier 6 and maybe Tier 7 games over a KV2. But a KV2 was better in Tier 8 games. So now that you get Tier 6 and 7 games more often in your Tier 6s, they nerfed the ever-loving crap out of the OI, and now there's really not a reason to play it anymore. I mean, obviously you can still derp things, but it's not going to be anything like it was before. And finally, the BDR G1B, a very unassuming Tier 5 French heavy tank with no armor at all and a half-decent mobility. They nerfed the reload on the 90mm gun, which was the whole reason you'd play this tank in the first place. There is no logic behind this change. The tank was perfectly fine as is, honestly, maybe not even good necessarily as it was, and now it's just way worse for no reason. No other stats about the gun were changed, just the reload. It's to the point where the stock gun is better in most ways, including almost 50% more DPM. Like the other changes, there's really no logic behind this one. They just made it worse for no reason. And now it's not worth playing an otherwise would-be fun tank. So that wraps up, in my opinion, the 8 tanks that have largely been ruined from these changes. Now, most of these are lower tier, and honestly nobody cares about probably any of these besides me and some other people. But if any of them were inherently broken, they would deserve these nerfs or reworks. But none of them deserved any of this. So now we're just stuck with a bunch of tanks that simply aren't worth playing ever again, and they probably won't ever be worth playing ever again, because I don't think they're ever going to get touched again after this. After all that, now we're getting to the good stuff. This is the Noteworthy category. Not all of these are buffs, and there's actually quite a lot of nerfs in here. Some of these are very debatable as well, like my inclusion of the M2 Lite, because, I mean, it's Tier 2, right? Here's the thing. This thing terrorizes low-tier games, and has for sure made people quit in the past. The machine gun reload was nerfed, which means this thing's reign of terror is probably over. But most of you guys are probably going, it's just a Tier 2, who cares? This stuff does matter, especially when it's one of the most common seal clubbing tanks. The same can be said for the Cruiser 3, the T6 Medium, and the M8A1. All of these are tanks that people seal club in all the time, and they all got changed in noteworthy ways that you should actually go and look at if you ever want to go back and ace a Tier 2 or 3 just to bump your numbers up. Also, if you're a newer player and you hated playing Tier 3 or 4, some of the worst offenders are gone now. There is a grand total of 55 tanks in this category, which is nice, equating to roughly 13 to 15% of the changes. I'll speed through this category because while there are a lot of tanks, they're in the Noteworthy tab for a reason. The VZ55 single shotgun now gets 530 alpha, and the auto-loading gun is the stock gun now, so you can play it with that one right off the bat. The Object 140 and Concept 5 were buffed in various ways, the most significant one being the alpha damage on both. The 140 gets 340 alpha instead of 320, and the Concept gets 460 instead of 430. The Manticore, T57 Heavy, Stinger, and IS-4 all got more shells, which really was the only change any of them needed anyway. It's the only thing keeping anyone from really enjoying these things. A lot of Tier 9 tanks got very extensive changes, which I couldn't possibly detail in any brief amount of time, but I will list them for you, and I urge you to check them out again. These are tanks that probably weren't great before, that you wouldn't play for any number of reasons that you should go and check out again. So, they are the WZ-120, the WZ-11114, the WZ-132A, the WZ-111GFT, got a nerf by the way, the Skoda T50, the AMX-5120, the Leo PTA, the UDES 16, the Object 590, and the WZ-114 Premium. Other changed Tier 9s include the T49, which now gets 2 heat rounds instead of 2 HE rounds and is a little more accurate and easy to use. The Tortoise, which lost some hit points and has its entire cupola as 175mm impacted thickness, which is not in the patch notes, by the way. And the T54, which got more standard pen, for once, and got almost every other stat on the tank buffed as well. I don't think I've ever played that tank. I should probably go and do it now. The T28, the tier 8 American one, not the tier 4 Russian one, got more frontal armor and more hit points, making it a lot more comfortable to play. The IS-22 and the IS-32 both had their stock grinds reworked, with one getting slightly buffed at the back end and one getting slightly nerfed. The ST2 also didn't get changed at all for some reason, even though I think it was the worst of the three, still no changes. The Blesk went from good to great, the Lynx went from underrated to unbelievable, the Hawk 12's gun is actually usable now, and the Charioteer's stock grind was cut in half. The Pantera's stock grind also got significantly improved. The IS-3 and T-44 have finally gotten some long overdue love in almost every way, and I've seen much more of them in the queue recently. The Saladin got a much more competitive average damage, a higher top speed, and more hit points, which actually allows for it to take early positions like the tank is kind of supposed to, you know? The T-34-1, VK3002D, and SP-1C have gotten even better in their own ways. The Oni, T-43, and AMX-AC-46 have gotten particularly interesting changes each, two of them getting more alpha damage and the AMX getting an autoloader, which is kind of insane. The Basato had its derp gun removed, and the absolutely insane 102mm gun got nerfed by quite a bit. The M6 also got nerfed by a lot, which was very overdue. The T-37 and KV-1S don't totally suck anymore. The T-150 might actually hit something now, on top of losing a ton of excess modules. The Palat gets a lot more gun depression now, on top of a handful of other buffs. And the Cromwell lost its derp gun, same as the Cavalier, but now gets 13 degrees of gun depression across the entire front and sides. Yes, really, 13. That is insane for tier 6, especially on a tank like the Cromwell, because it's still good. The IKV-103, which I think I'm the only person in the world who cares about that tank besides like Frosty and PBU, gets HE rounds now, which is interesting, as well as faster shells across the board and more hit points. The VK3001H got a lot of buffs, as well as losing a lot of modules. The Bishop's Reload got nerfed.
Oh, man! Listen to this arena sing!
And the KV-1 lost its entirely viable 57mm gun, now leaving just two gun options, which is kind of unfortunate, because that was always the rock, paper, scissors kind of ideology of what gun you'd pick on the KV-1. Would you pick the fastest firing gun with the highest DPM but the worst pen, the derp gun which had the highest alpha but the least accuracy, or the good old average 85mm right in the middle? It was always a fun question to pose to people, and now one of the three viable options is gone. The two biggest buffs at tier 5 though come in the form of the Chaffee, which is awesome, and the Semovente M41, and probably most of you are like, what is that? Well, first, almost every single stat on the Chaffee's gun was improved, including penetration, damage, and accuracy, without increasing the reload time. The tank is also faster, which is a very welcome change given its ridiculous traverse speed. That is very nice most of the time, but having a faster top speed means it will be even better. The Semovente M41, tier 5 Italian tank destroyer, before the Bisonte, now goes 45 kph, on top of having one of the best DPMs at tier 5, and that's before you load the absolutely ridiculous HE shells that tank has. I am definitely going to be playing this tank again after this video. So that just leaves the last two tanks, the M5 Stuart and the AMX-40. Keep in mind, these are two of the first light tanks someone will ever play, so they have to make a good impression on people. The M5 Stuart got a long list of buffs to the gun, and some other things. The AMX-40 had nearly every single stat about it improved, except for the top speed. Now that the tank finally has a half-decent power-to-weight ratio, they nerfed the top speed down. So, one little hair in an otherwise good soup. And all of that brings us to the main event now. The 12 tanks that I have deemed, quote-unquote, reborn by this patch. Now, that 12 has a little asterisk on it for a reason. The number is only 12 because 3 of them are the same tank. The Panzer 58 and its reskins, as well as the Indian Panzer, all get 300 alpha damage now. The Indian suffers a bit of a reload speed nerf, but the Panzer 58s do not. This, in combination with some mobility buffs, puts the Panzer 58 from a fairly mediocre tank, which is reskinned twice, to a pretty decent peck no matter which one you get or how you get one. There's even one in the Bond shop. The only tier 7 that I deemed worthy of the Reborn section of this video is the Stur Emil. This lumbering sack of potential had such hard limitations with what it was allowed to do before 2.0, and now it's allowed to spread its wings. I guess stretch its legs is probably a more apt description with how fast this tank still doesn't go. But still, it isn't fast, but at least it's going faster than 20 now on flat ground. It also had a cripplingly low ammo count, which has been improved by a fair amount, and in more ways than one. Not only does it get 6 more shells, but it also gets the option for a gold round, which it frankly didn't really need, but still. Pretty much any reason to not play the tank is gone now, so, I mean, check it out. The Type 5 Heavy got... This thing is so getting nerfed, dude. Oh my god, this thing is so getting nerfed. The T-34-2 and the 110 both got a lot of buffs, as well as a lot of stock grind improvements, to the point where both tanks are actually worth playing now. Their limitations were largely eliminated. That's a complicated sentence, say that 5 times fast. And now they're both pretty good tanks to play. The 110 already was pretty decent as it was, but it got a lot of changes, and all of them were for the better by a margin. The T-34-2, on the other hand, was supposed to be good like 3 times, and it never has been. Now, it has its own time to shine, after like 6 years of completely pointless balance changes. The sleeper tank, that no one's gonna care about really, before we get to the 2 big ones, is the Batshad AP. This is a tank that almost nobody cared about like 3 weeks after it replaced the Lorraine 40T all those years ago. And it's pretty easy to see why. It's an AMX 5100's gun, a tier higher. Simple enough, and it worked a lot of the time because it didn't have any of the issues the 5100 has. It's small, it's fast, and it can clean up kills amazingly well because it lets the gun do all the work. And then the Cobra came out, and people became infinitely more paranoid about being clipped out by tier 9 autoloaders. This tank's effectiveness dropped hard in a matter of weeks without a single balance change happening to anything. And it slowly became more annoying to play over time because it takes so long to get the clip damage out. Tanks were coming out that were as mobile as it or could reliably put more damage out than it, and it kind of started to feel like a parody of itself. Oh my god, did they give this thing the good stuff. In exchange for removing 1 shell out of the 6, which puts it down to 5 shells in a magazine, they gave the lost damage of that 6th shell to the other 5. Meaning this tank does 360 damage per hit, or 440 with HE. It reloads 5 seconds faster, base, taking the reload from a dragging 40 seconds at best, to just 34 with ease. Every stat about the guns was buffed, both for stock and upgraded, as well as more hit points and more view range. If you've never played this tank or haven't played it in years, now is the time to crack it back out. Because what else are you going to do with your French medium crew? Play Onslaught with normal Batchat, or play the tier 11 in this line? Of course not, it sucks. You're not playing the tier 11 in this line. Play this thing instead and thank me later. It is awesome now. And all of that brings us to the 2 stars of the show in this update. The 2 tanks that have waited long and hard for their time in the spotlight, and that time has come. The TVP VTU and the Object 416. Oh, how the ugly ducklings have grown up to be beautiful swans. And oh boy, have these 2 earned every second of it, because oh my god. The TVP VTU, for literal years, was considered the worst tank in the game by pretty much everybody, to a point where if a tank died to a TVP VTU, the tank was deemed balanced, because how on earth did you die to this pile of garbage? That's changed now, and oh boy is this ever a glow up that is worth talking about. This thing was genuinely the worst of all worlds. It was a jack of nothing. It wasn't fast, it was a box, and it wasn't an autoloader, which was the whole point of this line. And this was the only tank in the game that was put into a situation like this. The Pantera gets an autoloader. Auto reloader, I guess. The TNH 105, as terrible as it is, gets an autoloader. The Emil 1 gets an autoloader. The T69 gets an autoloader. The AMX AC 48 gets an autoloader. And the AMX 5100 gets an autoloader. There's even a premium of the same tier, class, and nation that had an autoloader, and this one never did, until now. Now, the gun isn't anything insane. It's a fairly decent 3-shot autoloader in every way, with a slightly faster than average clip speed. However, fairly decent is god tier when it comes to this tank's standards. Instead of 240 damage per engagement, you're doing over 700, and you can do it over and over again. The tank is still bad at what it was bad at before, but the gun is infinitely better, and it's not even close. The one issue I kept having with this tank is that the standard rounds seem pretty tough to use. If you're fighting anything that isn't just point and shoot, then it's going to prove difficult at times. I had to fire a lot of gold out of this thing to see its potential, but oh boy did it ever perform. This thing was a completely different tank to what I tried playing twice before this, and only in positive ways. The line finally has a proper entry tank for its gimmick, and it's one it can be very proud of too. As for the other insanely good buff that happened this patch, the Object 416 was already, you know, a mostly fine tank on its own, but had various things about it that made it kind of unappealing for a lot of people, and I even know about them too. It required a very strong setup with a good game sense, good aim, and required quite a lot of credits to play, considering it had literally the T-54's gun with 330 heat pen at tier 8. So obviously you're going to shoot a lot of that if you can afford to. However, with this update, the gloves have come off. You have 1450 hit points on a full turret, which you didn't have before, with ELC even 90 moving camo. Let me explain like how this even happened actually. So I've waited like a year and a half to put this in a video because it's not really a secret. Like it's not going to change anything about how you play this game. But it's one of those things that it's how part of the game works, and it's fascinating, even though it's entirely pointless if you know this. So please allow me to indulge in one of the nerdiest elaborations you're ever going to hear on this channel, and that is saying a lot. So here we go. You ready? Okay. Every tank in the game gets a camouflage rating that is usually unique to their own vehicle. Sometimes they copy it from other vehicles, doesn't matter. It has been explained for years that light tanks keep their stationary camo while moving, which is true because that's how the game calculates stationary camo bonuses. Instead of giving you more camo when sitting still, they take it away from you when you're moving. This is why the Swedish tank destroyers keep their camo when they're turning. Light tanks, while they're moving, don't lose anything. That's the bonus they get. What is actually the case, in a practical sense, is the opposite. Instead of getting 100% of their stationary camo as moving camo, light tanks get a 0% bonus while stationary. Now, that's not the coding part. The coding part works the way I explained it first. But in a practical sense, they don't get a bonus while sitting still. If light tanks had better camo than all the other classes by a margin, then this would mean something, and maybe it did years ago. But nowadays, things are getting the same moving camo that light tanks do. So this moving concealment bonus is more of a gimp for a lot of them, but that's not the point here. For the other classes, besides light tanks, this is very different, and all strictly better. Heavy tanks and artillery usually get double their moving camo as stationary camo for some reason. I mean, most of them have terrible camo anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Tank destroyers get 66% more, and mediums get 33% more. Except for one. The Object 416, Object 432, and K91 didn't have full turrets until a few rebalances ago, and even after that rebalance, the 416 still didn't have a full turret. Because the tank didn't have a full turret many years ago, they decided to give it the stationary camo bonus that tank destroyers have instead of medium tanks. This is why, prior to 2.0, despite the Barask getting only 0.07 less moving camo, it had almost 5% worse stationary camo base. For seemingly no reason, right? That's kind of out of nowhere unless you do the math, and you know any of this is happening in the first place. 24.19 divided by 14.55 comes out to a 66% bonus, which is the same one that tank destroyers have. Now, none of this actually matters, because with 2.0, they've given this tank a full turret, and they've changed that bonus to be the same as all other medium tanks. Depending on how they went about doing this, they could either make the tank just, alright, or something truly special, and they picked truly special. Instead of nerfing the stationary camo to be the 33% bonus that all the mediums get, they buffed the moving camo up to where that is at the 33% bonus that medium tanks get. Now, in English this time, that means this tank went from 14.55% moving camo to 18.13 seamlessly, and it gets a full turret now to boot. And this is not listed in the patch notes anywhere. There's no listed anything about them fixing this and the camo going up by almost 4%. If you want a physical example, that's better moving camo than every single tier 8 except the ELC Even 90, the EBR 75, the LHMTV, the Lynx, the LT432, the Batchat 12T, the T92, the Blesk, and the Squall as a medium tank with 3000 DPM. When fully pimped out, this tank gets just short of 55% moving camo. Just short of 55% moving camo. Just for comparison, the ELC Even 90 with the same setup gets a maximum of 59%. And that's with vents, so you don't get 445 meters view range with CVS. The 416 does. And the vents helps out on so many other things too. This makes this thing ridiculous. You get better moving camo than almost every light tank in the game, with more hit points than every other tier 8 light on top of one of the best damage outputting guns at tier 8 on a full turret with very decent mobility, and you can platoon stack with them. How is this thing not a premium tank? Oh, you know what? This is so dumb. We have better camo than he does.
Yep.
The only thing that tank has now is engine power. It's power to weight, that's it. Triple lights as well, and we're backup lights. We're not hitting that.
Oh, the AP shell is just so slow.
Did he get tracked, or did he?
He's tracked now. Oh. Dead.
Hey, well, I mean, good and bad news. The Char died. Oh yeah, I need to take a picture of the SFAC marks today and then like in a month and just watch it. Just vertical line. The average server-wide win rate right now in the SFAC is like 55.8 or something. So I can't wait for that to just drop hard. Hit this guy. We can actually stay unspotted by hitting this guy through the bushes.
Man, I keep hitting dirt.
Real. Not tracked. Someone track him.
Are you right in front of me?
I need to make a video about this tank because no one seems to care. This thing is busted. Don't worry, Typhlosion, you didn't block that. Missed him anyway. Okay, tank's busted, but so is the gun right now, it seems. T4 was also nice. Hope 430's worth it. 430's nice because there is no, like, stock gun. You just play the tank and that's it. You don't have to worry about grinding 4 modules before the tank is playable. Which after this patch you probably wouldn't really have to anyway, but still. Yeah, we need to go kill literally all of their 10s because all our 10s are dead. Tier 10, 11, 430U. People don't seem to be liking the 432 very much. The tier 11. The tier 10's probably one of the best, like, beginner-friendly tanks I could think of for tier 10. This gun is amazing at hitting the last possible thing before what I'm shooting at.
Yep. Can I not bounce the IS?
Okay. I hit the middle of his lower plate and tracked him.
Oh my goodness.
Tracers have been like laughably wrong this patch. Feel bad about that one. Oh! That was on the move. Yeah, go get that guy. That was on the move, hit an EBR.
I'm shooting at the lower plate of an E3. And
I think I can make it on the hill without being spotted, maybe? Oh, for sure, wait. 370 meters, not spotted. No, explosion god.
that's not good.
Most of their team was just sitting and waiting for that. Hey, BR. Well, that's... Gun depression's actually gonna let him live. My gun depression actually let him live there. Because this hill slopes backwards, just barely.
I'm bouncing the side of an IS-7.
Yeah, IS-7 side armor. If the Russians made everything out of side armor, they would have won every battle forever. I'm trying to buy time, but
I can't pen the E3 lower plate because, you know, why would you be allowed to do that?
they're just waiting. Marginal, yes. 514?
Nice.
What's your name, pretty? 514. Alright. Hall of Mirrors.
Oh.
I'm still spotted, that's why I haven't peeked this yet.
I'll spot IS-7.
That tank can hit that hard? Really? No, but apparently yes. Alright, E3's not looking at you.
Really?
I am concerned where this girl 15 went.
Armor not hit.
I am out of range of everybody.
Gorill's just gonna stare at me. I'm gonna wait. Wait and see.
Woo! Yes!
Dude,
That was out of render. Huge, 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 huge. They have made this tank into a tier 9. Oh,
got him.
amazing. Alright.
Oh,
I missed him by a matter of inches then. I wasn't even facing the same direction.
nope. Gonna come after me here. You should be able to get him.
So the extra BM of switching to AP.
Yeah.
He's gonna commit to crossing. Alright.
Easy.
I don't think you got top XP Typhlosion. I'm gonna just go out and guess. I'm gonna just throw that out there that might not have happened. I mean, maybe. Maybe, but I doubt it. I got Nicole's medal. I don't even know how many of those I have. Okay, well, we both just aced it, which is hilarious.
Wow.
That is insane.
That's my second game ever in this tank.
How good must the patent have done? Did third on damage. I don't know when they died.
The patent was right next.
Oh yeah, and Typhlosion didn't live. That might have something to do with it too. Yeah, double ace. Tank is busted. That was 2v5, 6. So there's my recap of all of how the biggest rebalance in World of Tanks history really happened. It's pretty much what I expected it to be. The vast majority of it probably didn't really matter, but there are some things to take away from it, and new tanks that you could go out and enjoy that were so bad before you'd never even consider playing them. A lot of them have been made a lot better, and there are some lower tier tanks that have been made worse that were also kind of suffocating lower tiers that aren't as much of a problem anymore. So there's definitely some stuff to go and check out before the next set of balance changes comes out, because there is another set of balance changes coming out. But yeah, Batchat 25 TAP, TVP VTU, and the Object 416. You got 3 new tanks that you can go out and enjoy that you've probably never played before. So have at it.